All right, guys, we're back in business. I think this is sort of, telltale sign that we should hold off on using the new Telegram features for.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it works great, and then other times it just doesn't work.
That's my beef with
consistently
it,
at all.
right? It's like, it's good for getting people to come out to them. It's a little bit easier for people to join. But it's not ideal. So, maybe Discord's our platform for that if we want to have these more.
Yeah, is that what we used last time, Discord?
No, most of the time
Mama.
we're using Zoom. But last one we did was on Telegram, right? And it was fine. But who knows? I think Telegram's just too buggy sort of to be reliable, unfortunately.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll jump in. Jim sounds like he's having some issues, and we'll just really quickly go over the history because it's not the super important part of this, anyways. A lot of people know it. We'll just give the bullet points, and then Justin, you can sort of fill me in if I miss anything. But yeah, essentially, sort of in my readings at least, it was sort of created just to be the human element of the chain, right? Because you can be decentralized and technological and all that sort of stuff, whatever, but you still need that human element to sign contracts, be the voice for the community, and just represent the technology. And that was kind of how it started, right? I know there was a lot more in place when it first started around Telos Foundation voting tokens and stuff like that, which kind of went to the wayside over the years, right? Because basically the foundation just didn't have the resources, right? So really over time, this voted in role of board members slowly became more just dependent on volunteers who, God bless them. They helped keep the foundation going through the bear market that it was started on. But as we've received more resources and stuff like that, there's been more of a structure put in place and a core team there, and kind of just a need to start restructuring and looking at how we run the elections and developing that structure and that sort of thing, right? Feel free to fill in anything I'm missing here, Justin. It looks like we've got Jim back now with the fancy backdrop there too. So wonderful.
No, that was a great summary. Yeah, speaking of someone who was there from the beginning, it was it was an interesting start because like when we established the foundation, we were basically starting from scratch. And we had to put in a lot of processes and just how we work together, we had to do sort of on the fly. And it's really come together over the last few years. And there's been a lot of lessons learned as well. We had, some people who were part of the original foundation, they quickly had to sort of leave because, at the time they were required to do so many hours to contribute because there was so much set up to do. But we've sort of like reached a point over the last 2 years where, the board member, all the board members, they do need to be across everything. So they need to be like a invested part of the ecosystem, either like as an app developer or some sort of contributor or really devoted community member, which we have a lot of now and didn't have originally. But they don't actually necessarily, they don't need to work, a 40-hour week to be part of the foundation board. In fact, it's encouraged, I guess, that's separated, and you have board members who are helping to guide the budget of the foundation, by voting on multi-signatures, which is our approval process for funding. But you have separate to that a staff of leaders in various areas like marketing in your case, exchanges, and a technical leader as well, for handling interactions with various apps. Also, partnerships is another key one, partnerships and business development. So we have these key areas where you need leadership in place, also preferably kind of a CEO role as well. So yeah, basically these board members need to put in place a key individual and a team, and also, guide the budget. But they don't necessarily need to work day to day, but it's still kind of a considerable amount of time, maybe, a couple of hours a week that is required. So yeah.
And if you're breaking it down really technically, right, like the foundation and the board, like anybody can represent Telos, right? So there's no rule that says,
yeah, they're not hard and fast rules.
The board is any better than anyone else representing Telos, right? And initially, the budget came and it was part of the initial launch of it or whatever in the white paper, and it's part of the structure of the launch, I believe, right? But then there was talk about whether it was the foundation would be like any other separate entity reapplying through a worker proposal, and then with TBNOA 1, that budget sort of ended up coming from the reserve funds as voted by the community, who was happy with the work they were doing. But technically all they do is they just have extra resources that are coming from the community because they're put there to represent the chain with more resources, right? So anyone can, actually represent Telos because nobody owns Telos, but the board is given those resources, financial resources and support from the community to do that, correct?
Exactly.
Sorry I dropped out there, guys.
No worries. Great to have you back.
I mean, Justin sort of summed it up really well. I think when we first started, we had a blank sheet of paper. We had some ideas from Douglas, and it was very, I think Justin will admit, it was very difficult to start with because it was literally nothing. We've got nothing to start with. And now this election, I think, can really push us forwards because we have got a far more, a better base or foundation, for a better word, to work from. And I think I really want to encourage people to be on the board who are very active in the community, because you haven't got to do the day-to-day nitty-gritty work like Justin's pointed out, because that is actually being handled by the core team. But the bottom line is that we're all about transparency and decentralization, and the board members have got the ability to hold the team that they employ technically to account. And that's the really important thing. And that's a valuable thing about these elections. And I'm sure we're going to go through the expectations of what a board member should do. And I think that's a key point. We're not expecting you to work 40 hours and build stuff, but I think being active in the community and having the interest of Telos at heart and wanting to make sure that that it's transparent and that the decentralized nature of the project is protected, and that is really the role of the Telos board. They sign the checks, but they keep an eye on what's going on, and I think, and the point about being an active member of the community, it's the spotlight of public opinion is the only defense we've got against any sort of wrongdoings, if you like. Because if you see something wrong as part of the Telos community, you can shine a light on it and you get support. And that's the whole point about it. But the idea of having elections is that if you, as a Telos member, don't think the board has done their job, you can stand and you can sort of advocate your point of view. And and it's more about, it's not so much being a keyboard warrior. You're actually getting out there and doing the right thing and protecting everybody's interest on chain. And that's my sort of 2 pence to start with, if you like.
Oh, that was beautifully said, really well said. And that ties right into the next point I had here, right, which is just kind of why it's important. And, I think, like you say, an important distinction with these elections, based off the first time where you guys had to make it up and do it all, is now there is a team there who can do the work. And so the board members who are elected don't have to have a specific skill set. They just have to have a passion for Telos and the network and representing the community properly, right?
And I do think that we've actually had 2 elections. We had the initial election, and then we had some interim elections from the people because the history so far is people they join one meeting and go, this is not for me, and they run away. And that's happened twice now, where people have come in and lasted literally, in some cases, 10 minutes before they hit the resign button and go. So we don't want that to happen again. And part of that's why I know you're going to go on to this, Liam, but that's why we've put into this timeline for these elections, putting in a couple of opportunities for people to visit a meeting and sort of be part of a meeting beforehand. And that will give you an idea and a flavour of whether this is for you or not. And, you know, rather than coming in cold, you'll see the team, you'll meet the team, and you'll know whether you can work with the team and support that team or not. And so we've got two sort of two meetings penciled in as part of the process, but I'll let you go through that.
No, yeah, that's great. Yeah, we're definitely going to get to that. And that's important, right? Sort of pulling away the curtain, showing how the foundation operates and stuff like that. Because, you know, what a lot of people I don't think realize is that, you know, you can only be transparent to a point with certain things, right? And that's part of the role of the board, who is there and held accountable by the community as the sort of watchdog figures for them. Is it's a really efficient way to build out transparency, right? So when the community elects people that they trust to be there and see how things operate, without, you know, the foundation needing to broadcast every step.
I mean, I think part of having meetings like this is to try and explain to people the sort of people that we want, and we want passionate people.
Yeah.
You need people who are going to abide by collective responsibility.
Yeah.
You've got to abide by the group decision, and you know, you can argue as much as you like within the meetings and have disagreements and fallouts. I mean, me and Justin have had many a fallout over many things, but you know, in public we have never fallen out because, you know, you don't do that. And also as part of the you know, a lot of what the background team are doing with partnerships and other, you know, we're talking sort of actual commercial agreements. You've got to have what they call non-disclosure. You've got to adhere to that, and that's obviously part of the respect and the professionalism that we want from the anybody joining the Telos board.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just dropping some links here as we go, guys. So, you know, rather than sharing my screen, you guys can kind of go through and read as you like. Yeah, and see some of those documents that we put out there. The thing I'm going to drop right now is just the Telos core team document. And maybe Justin, you can just really quickly touch on the core team, and Jim too, about how there's sort of basically two teams in the foundation, right? We've got our Telos core team, and those are the working people who are doing the work, and then we've got our Telos Foundation board, and those who are elected to help guide the direction and oversee the people doing the work. Because I do think there's still some confusion there in the elections, even though we've said it a couple of times, is that, you know, you don't need to be the one doing the exchanges or knowing about that stuff to do that. Just talk about those two teams and how they differ. And also how people could get involved in the core teams too, if they like, right? Because that's a question we get as well. So let's talk about that for a second, and I'll drop that document in here.
Do you need me to, do you have sharing screen?
Yeah, here, let me share it 1 second. I'm just going to drop it in the chat first, and then I'll
Are you going to go through the core team first, Justin?
Yeah, I can do that.
I can share it on the screen if we'd like. Give me 1 second here. It looks like you have sharing.
Okay, I can share it on my screen.
Yeah, yeah, and you don't even need to walk through it too in depth. People can always read it, but you can just you know, give some clarification over the differences between the core team and the board members, right?
Totally, yep. Okay, just getting this. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot here.
I wouldn't bother going, let people read it, right? It's just, I just wanted to drop it there so people have
exactly.
talk about it.
But yeah, basically, I mean, we have the board itself. You know, we've got, I think one of the reasons we're really in need of election is that currently we only have 3 board members officially. So yeah, we have this board. It should be around, I think it's going to be around 6 members in the upcoming election, give or take. And basically, yeah, these people approve the budgets, and they also kind of, yeah, like Jim was saying, and put it much better than what I can, is they need to make sure the staff of the foundation are fully accountable, and particularly the leadership, because at the moment, at the end of the day, they're representing the stakeholders of the chain to ensure these funds are spent correctly. Yeah, the difficult thing is, there's sometimes NDAs, so not everything can be fully transparent, which is really unfortunate. We would love if we could, decide on, exchanges and things together as a community, but sometimes that can't be done because of the way these other organizations work. And that's why you need the most trusted people involved to make approvals of these sorts of things. But yeah, to be clear, you've got these board members. They need to, ensure the staff are to account and approve budgets at the end of the day, and sometimes key decisions as well. And then separate to that, you have, at the moment, a leadership team. We have like Liam, who's the head of marketing, and Sukesh is leading up, exchange and liquidity management efforts. Jeff is leading up partnerships, and so on. And so their budgets are being approved by the board, and in future, it might be a actual CEO put in place who's helping to oversee everything. At the moment, we have a few people like myself and GV who take on those CEO type roles. But yeah, the main thing is you do have these two separate groups. Sometimes the board member does overlap with the staff, but we're trying to get away from that where possible. Obviously, we're still a small community, and sometimes that is necessary. And where that is necessary, I guess like the fact is we need to put in the most moral and ethical people into board seats to ensure that if they have to do that, then they exclude themselves from decisions where perhaps they would have a conflict of interest. That's really important. So yeah, it's that's sort of where we're at now.
Sorry to cut across you just now.
No, go ahead.
I think the beauty of that document is that it's so long, in as much as that it's there, and which is really reassuring for anybody who's steps forward to the board, because there is a long and rather in-depth document about the core team, which is the staff. Now, the point is that if you in a year's time, if the new board sort of wants to reconfigure that, then they're fully entitled to do that. But at the moment, you've got something there, and there's a structure to build on, and that is so key that we keep this structure that we've got to build on. It might not be perfect, and I'm sure it can change, and it will develop like the current one has developed over the last 2.5 years. I forget how old the chain is now. It seems to be a long time. These things will sort of change, and they will evolve. And I think that's the important thing about, we want to evolve rather than have a revolution. And
100%.
And I mean, I became sort of very vocal in the election within the chats in the foundation, because it does concern me that we've not got enough people on the multi-sigs, and that is a weakness. And we'll hold our hands up. It is a weakness now, and that's what we're setting about changing. And that's all part of the transparency and all part of the way forward. So I think you need to be reassured that you're not going to be expected to run anything. You are part of the checks and balances, and you are there to sort of approve budgets and to shape budgets and to be part of the management team, not to be on the ground doing the work, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. I guess we can't tell people how to vote or whatever, but from our experience over the last few years, you really want people who have a cool, calm head and who are going to evaluate, what's happening now, which, as Jim said, we have a full team in place and things are going really well. Probably, I dare say better than they have ever, because we have a structure. And we're looking for like gradual evolution of this, taking in facts, analyzing things and working together with the team to, make more minor tweaks than anything, because, yeah, we've had experience where people have, wanted more of a revolution, and, they're just not accustomed to the realities of running a foundation. And, it's easy to say, hey, we'll do this and this and this, but the realities of it, you have to have that experience to understand those. So any people that come in, it's important that they really listen first before talking. I think there's a phrase for it, but I blanked on it. But that's really important, that you're a good listener, because there is a lot of information to take in. It's a brand new thing that we're doing here, like DAX and DAOs, and Telos is basically one of these. And we're sort of inventing things as we go along to some extent. So it's really important that we take in all the lessons learned as fast as we can, and really learn from those and evolve really quickly. So yeah, we don't want necessarily people to come in and just totally shake things up. We want people to come in and hold the current team accountable, and where they're not living up to expectations, then make adjustments. But you don't want to throw out what's working at the same time.
Okay. And are you going to move on to the timeline, Liam?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's really well said. And I think just before we move on, in terms of making sure we have that gradual evolution of things, that's why when we get to the timeline, we'll see that we have some opportunities for, as Jim mentioned, current board members potential future board members who are considering running, to come and see how things operate and see the way things are working, right? And like Justin says, we're all just learning how a DAO operates. I think the industry is still so young that the important thing is for everybody, both the old people and the new people, just to be open to listening to all the ideas and experimenting and trying things in a way that, like Jim says, doesn't change things overnight, but is a way for us to experiment and learn and discover how this industry operates, right? Because it's still so young. And it's been a great evolution over the years, really, when you look at the past. When you talk to people around Telos, I found, right, it feels, they talk about it like it's been this huge drawn out thing that's lasted forever. If you were talking to someone in any other industry outside of crypto, you would think it was 2 decades, but it's only been 3 years, right? And that's just because of the nature of the crypto industry. And I think the growth that the ecosystem's seen in those 3 years is amazing. And we've put a lot of our competitors to shame, just because we have done so much, and people really need to be proud of that, I think. So let's jump into the timeline. I'll just run through the timeline really quickly. How about Justin, maybe you can share your screen since we have the sharing privileges, and just pull up that timeline and expectations. And if you just jump down, there's a heading there called expected timeline. But August 3rd, this is our first event, this elections roundtable. And we can have more of these events as we need for any community topic, right? Just a chance for us to have a discussion and a presentation, and then a discussion with the community members. August 13th and 20th, or in that week somewhere, those next, was it 2nd and 3rd week of August, that's when we'll be opening it up for potential candidates who are interested to come and see the operations and see how things run. If you're interested in doing that and you're a potential candidate, it's not a hard and fast requirement, but I think it's recommended that you do that, and you should reach out to the board members to sort of arrange that and figure that out. And that's going to be an important thing, really, I think, just in terms of people just understanding how the foundation operates. And then on August 26th, I believe I have it here as Telos Tuesday, but I think it's the Telos Thursday, foundation and candidate AMA that we'll be running. So a similar event like this, but for any candidate who's interested to come and address the community, talk about why they're excited, and then we can open it up to the community to ask them questions. So that'll be happening August 26th, ideally, or in that week somewhere.
Just jump
yeah,
on.
Go ahead.
On the candidate AMA, I think we need to be really clear that we want people who are willing to be visible, who are willing to be big in the community, are willing to have their face on the website. So even though we can't make any of that happen because anyone can sign up, I think that hopefully the community through the voting system will elect people who are able and have the ability to be vocal and to be public and to be held accountable publicly, because that is the key part of this.
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, I guess if you're worried about that sort of thing in that sort of event and being asked questions before you're elected, it's not a good look in terms of looking for people who are accountable, right? There's a level of diplomacy there, I think you would hope, with the people who are elected, in that even once you're elected and there is NDAs or stuff like that, you still should be able to field questions, answer things from the community, and those concerns, right? Because those will always be there. So, learning how to build that trust is an important thing, I think. So highly encourage that people attend that. And then September 1st is our tentative election start date. So that all depends on the technical side of things, right? Jesse's said to me, and the rest of the TCD team, we've been chatting with them, sort of looking at what needs to be done. And that seems like a realistic date, but it is, the way technical things go, there can always be glitches and bugs that come up. So there's an asterisk next to that as being the tentative start date. But ideally, that's when, and if you're considering running, you should have your application in well before that, right? So that we can facilitate the process there and get that running. We're looking at a potential 7-day window for the voting period. And then at that point, it'll be done. Go ahead, Jim. Yeah.
I just want to jump in really quickly there. The reason you might be wondering why there are technical issues, the reason is that the first 2 votes that we started, even though we're using the same contract, we used a different voting system. We had something called the Telos voting token, which you were granted as part of if you were part of the setup. And it was like a privilege, if you like, and we were going to keep that, but then we realized that was rather elitist. It was only people who were there at the start, and we're going for sort of 1 vote, 1 token, and voting your full token weight. So that's why there is this little bit of, I know this guy Jesse and his team, I don't know, it's other people I should credit there, apologies. They've got it on the test net, but that's why we've been really careful about this, because when you do this as part of a board member, I know we've gone to this before, you have to be part of the contract. You have to do a contract action online to nominate, to be nominated, and then to accept the candidacy. And then the votes are online, and it's all on chain. So there's every vote is counted. It's all on chain. It's all part of the contract, which the guys are changing the variables on, because we have changed the voting system from how it was last time to a much better one. I'm sure everyone will agree, because it's far more democratic in that sense. Sorry, Lynn, do carry on.
No, that's great, and thank you for clarifying that. Another team to credit, and some of them are here in case we have any questions, is the Decide team. Ideally that app just launched a week or 2 ago. Go try it out if you haven't. It's amazing. But it's a great UI that we haven't had before for the Telos Decide voting system. And so ideally they'll be run on that. It sounds like we're pretty confident that that's where people will be able to go and vote, but working out that sort of thing and integrating that's an aspect of it as well. So big shout out to the Decide team and the TCD and everybody else who's working on this. At that point, yeah, so ideally if we start on the 1st, it'll be done by the 7th, I guess. From that point, we'll have another timeline, I guess, with that gradual transition of those people into those roles look, how we sort of give them the further tours of how things operate. And so it's not just like Jim says, an evolution, not a revolution. Yeah, that document with that timeline is out as well there on telos.net for anyone who wants to look over it. We also have some further expectations on there as well that Jim and other board members have and past and present foundation workers have worked on to offer some input on. But Jim, gets great credit for this, for all his work on not only this and helping to oversee this initiative, but just his work since the start of the foundation. So thank you, Jim, for that. And encourage people to look at all those documents and stuff that's on the website there and that have been posted in the chat.
I think it's important that people do read through those documents, and we don't need to sort of read them all out.
No.
But we've had some things in the chat about the compensation, etc., etc. So if I just read out the sort of what I see as the minimum expectations, and these are only my views. You might have a different view, and it's decentralized, and you might come and get voted and have a different view. But we're looking at. I think we're looking at no more than or up to 4 hours a week dedicated to the role. I think that's sort of minimum requirement, and that will be compensated in line with the pay of the core team. That's to be, but it'll be an average of what the core team are paid. I think to attend quarterly meetings is a must. You'd have to attend a quarterly meeting, one quarterly meeting, so you could approve the month's budgets of the various core team. Then I've just sort of put things down, be active in the Telos community. So, you'll be expected to be reading the Telegram channel, be expected to answer anything in the Telegram channel. Sort of maintain, as Justin always pointing out, high level of professionalism, and to sort of like the thing that I've already touched on, to lobby privately within Telos structure and the core team, your views, and then accept collective responsibility for any decisions made. So that I think is really important, and adhere to non-disclosure partner agreements. But the bottom line is you're going to be paid the going hourly rate, and we're expecting up to no more than 4 hours a week, and to attend a quarterly meeting. So it can be very, very light touch, or you can dive in a lot more and become far more involved. And I think that's important. And also, just to touch on, if you don't want to put yourself forward to be elected, but you still want to get involved, you can. There's always been an idea of having an advisory board, and I think once the board is set up, if you want to be part of the system but not actually be on the multi-sig and be part of that setup, then everybody's welcome at the TF. If you want to do a job, then put your hand up, and we will really try and make use of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you covered it well there, Jim. I mean, I envisage and we'll put out a suggestion, in the coming weeks. It might be something, in that range of like $50 to $80 an hour, or around thereabouts, and there's an expectation of up to 4 hours a week, and we'll put more kind of guidance around this, but the idea isn't that it's like a lucrative thing, because like the people who are actually applying are doing so not for the pay. That's just more compensation for their time. Most of the people who will apply, I imagine, will be doing it because they're already vested stakeholders in the network. So that's their interest is aligned to improving the network, less so the actual pay considerations. But just so, because everyone has to give up time, obviously that's giving up other work. There needs to be some compensation, obviously.
Just to answer a question in the chat from CJ, I'm not expecting people to sit and answer questions for 4 hours on Telegram. The point I was making is that for you to be able to form an opinion to where the Telos community, where the TF should aim their work, as long as you've got an ear on what goes on in that little echo chamber, I think you need that. I'm not saying you've got to answer any questions. I'm saying you've got to be. I'm not saying you've got to read it. Just be aware of the look and feel of it, so you can bring that to a meeting. Otherwise, you don't want to come blind to a meeting, got no idea of what's going on, because that's not what we want. We want people who are engaged. So I think that's the Telegram's horrendous, and I hate on there all the time, but I think it's a necessary evil just to get a flavour and a feel of where we're going with things. So the number of board seats, I think we're looking at 7 at the moment. That is not hard and fast, but the reason we've got to make so few board seats, the idea of that is that trying to work in a decentralized way is very difficult. And I will use the analogy of herding cats. You've got to, if you've got too many people, it is too difficult to do it. And 7 is quite a nice number of people to guide. These multi-seats have got to be signed because people need to be paid. So that's why we're looking at 7, because it's a nice number to be able to control. If the board decide that in the next election they want more members or they want to expand that board, then that can be done. Again, it's an evolution. And if you feel vehemently that there should be more board members, then get in a chat, and it's that part of the contract has not been written yet. That's a variable that can be added. But my 2 penneth is 7. Because I think you can manage that amount of number. That's a number of a decent working team. Any more than that, I think it becomes difficult.
I think it's worth noting too that, you know, that number partially came after seeing the amount of applications that we've gotten, right? So, you know, we still do, I think, struggle with engagement, voter apathy, all this stuff in the community, and it's something we're working on. And hopefully this milestone helps push that forward. But we do only have 14 applications who have applied through the foundations, the way that we're facilitating it. Important to note, you don't have to fill out that form to do that, but we're here to help and facilitate that. So there could be more out there, and there could be more after this event, right? But you know, if you're made at 10 or 14 and there's only 14 people running, then it's just a matter of signing up to be in that position. But I think it's important to make sure that the people who are running have to try a little bit, and that the people in the community are putting thought to who they're voting to, as opposed to just checking a bunch of boxes and looking into the interests of these people, so they, you know, make a good choice. And there's a bit of competitiveness there in a good way, right? So people.
Yeah.
I'm just going to answer a couple more in the chat. If that's
okay. Go for it. 100%.
I think it's relevant. I'm going to come back to one in a moment. We're electing all 7 seats, yes. I think that's from Kevin. The idea of the election, it's a 2-year term, and that will be a flat 2-year term, a bit like a parliament, or in your case, a Senate or a House. And it's a 2-year term. And the idea of that is that there'll be 2-yearly elections. Again, we can change that, but I think 2 years is what we're going for at the moment. All 7 seats, 2 years. If there are vacant seats or we don't get enough people coming in, we could hold what I would call a by-election, but it would still end at the time when the whole term ends. You wouldn't be it wouldn't be running in concurrent your 2 years. Your term would end at the end of the current parliament. I'm going to use that word because that works for me. Okay, so that's that. At the moment, just how many people on the board members are going to run, we've only actually got 3 members, active members of the TF board on the multi-sig. I can't answer for them. You can go on the TF account and see who they are. I can't answer them, but I hope that they will all still put their names forward and go through, which I think off the top of my head is Justin, Rory and Jesse. I'm hoping they do, but it's up to them. If they want to nominate themselves, then that will be absolutely excellent. There's a question about diversity and non-native native English speaker. Diversity is a real issue within the blockchain community. I think there are more women in the Telos community than most communities I know. You know, I might be wrong on that, but we do have a lot of, and we've had right from the start with Erica, CJ, blah. We've had lots of people who have been active, women active on the chain. So I think it will be great to see women represented there. I don't think, as for non-English speaking, you know, the chain is an English-based chain, but it's not exclusive to that. If you were able to get voted on, I would encourage that, and we would work it out. We have technology. I'm sure Google Translate would be a great help, even a slight hindrance. But it would be fantastic if we got someone from certainly the African continent, the Asian continent, the Australasian continent. You know, I get fed up of Zoom calls looking at middle-aged white men, so it would be great.
Yeah, and I think an important thing to note is, you know, that's a problem in all, like diversity is a problem in all industries right now. In something like us, we should be actively trying to solve. And part of that, for me at least, is like an outgoing and like a outgoing initiative, right? So once that's why we're having these events, creating this documentation, so that we can not only look within our community, but ideally also go outside our community to find more people from diverse backgrounds as well, who are thought leaders and understand the space, and hopefully grow the community in that way. And, you know, I think I've had conversations with lots of people on the board about this topic, and it's something people recognize as being an issue. And that's why this election is great, right? So ideally, everybody should be reaching out to people, encouraging people to run and get involved if they think they would make a great fit for this position, and put them out there. And then hopefully, I would hope that our community does vote in a diverse panel in a board, right? And if that doesn't happen, it speaks to like a bigger issue out there if we have a diverse panel. But the first thing is getting a diverse group of people running, right? So please, you know, if you have anybody or know anybody who'd make a good position for this, reach out to them or reach out to me, and I'll reach out to them as well, right? Because it's something I think we need to have that outgoing initiative and that responsibility to reach outside our circles and try to bring people forward in those positions who can run for it. And at that point, it's up to the community to vote them in, and hopefully that happens. Geographic decentralization, I think, is really important too in the board seats. You know, that we do get people from all around the world. Just from a safety standpoint, same reason that it's great that on Telos we have VPs from all around the world, right? So,
I think it's Betty's asked the question of how we can enable people from other backgrounds. We just need help with that. You know, Telegram is a way to communicate and a way to encourage people. The actual the process of being nominated is that someone nominates you, and then you have to accept that candidacy. So if there's somebody that you really want to put forward, then we can do that. Education around blockchain is absolutely massive, and it's something that right from the start I was big on. And hopefully now Telos has got a little bit more of a foothold in the market. We've got a little bit more funding. We can look at education. You know, if I get elected to the board, if I decide to stand and get elected for the board, it'll be a privilege to do so. And I would be concentrating on educational projects to enable the best diverse and cross-section society that we can bring forward. So yeah, it's an issue, and we'll have to do our best to do something about that.
Part of it is building out an understanding of Telos, the ecosystem, the board responsibilities, and all of that first, because it's not enough just to go to someone and say, hey, want to run for this random board, right? So that's been part of this process of building these documents that have been shared here, having events like this and stuff like that. So that it's easy and more easy for community members to approach people and say, look at this. But, you know, feel free to put people on my radar too, and I'm happy to reach out to them in my time as well. So we have to, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say, you know, unless there's any more, I was just going to do your job for you, Lynn. But as you know, I used to be the chair, so I tend to do that. So it's just in notes. I tend to move people. Do carry on.
No, I appreciate it. I was just going to say, if you do have more questions, you know, drop them in the chat. We do have some that came in from our Google form and our application. If you're interested in both the past two pieces, there is like 2 articles we've dropped online. There's links to that Google form if you're interested in applying, and there's a place to ask questions there where a current board member will get back to you, or a past board member.
Can I just jump in about the Google form? Because I think it's important that, you know, if you listen to this or you're watching the recording and you are interested, it would be great if you register your interest on the Google form, because there, you know, we can then sort of corral. I mean, you don't. It's not a hard and fast. If you do register interest there, it doesn't mean to say that you're going to be part of the election. That's up to you. And being registered on the Google form doesn't bring you into the election. You've got to go through the actions on the smart contract. But we can sort of help people with that, and we'll be able to invite people to the MMA, etc. So if you register interest there, we can get an idea of who's interested, and we can sort of invite you to the board meetings and invite you to the process as it moves forward.
Yeah, exactly. So great that you clarified that, because I think it's important we sort of note that, right? Like, you don't have to fill out the Google form to run. It's go ahead if you want. If I was running, and I'm not, but if I was, I would never be able to figure out how to action a smart contract or set that all up without the help of some wonderful technical nerds that we have here. So that's part of the purpose of that form, is to help you facilitate it, right? But do feel free to ask questions there if you have more. We do have quite a few questions from that form. I don't know how we're feeling on time about going through them, or if we'd rather just follow up with them afterwards. Jim, do we want to take 15 more minutes, or how are you feeling?
I'm okay. It's up to you guys.
Yeah, let's go through a couple of them. I'll pull out a couple of the most prominent ones. Some of the questions in the Google form, it was sort of structured as, what are your questions for current board members? So we did have some questions which are just related to the board and its operations and stuff like that, but not fully pertained necessarily to the elections process. So we'll dive into those first, or stuff that would really be of interest to somebody running, and then we'll go from there. I guess both of you can answer this. What is the most challenging aspect of serving on the board?
That's a difficult question. I think it's just, and Jim alluded to it earlier, like in the past, it's been like, collaborating with so many different people. When we had 12 board members, it was maybe too many. But, over time, we've found ways to, collaborate better. And I think around 6 or 7, we had the best balance of everything. But it's always going to be a challenge, definitely, to come to conclusions on things as a collective. And that's a learned experience. I think that's something that you learn as you work in DACs like Telos, and on projects on Telos. You get a feel for it. You're really a consensus builder, and it's good in a way, because a lot of the times the concessions between what you think should be the way to go and what other people should be the way to go, like somewhere in between, is often the right way to go. So collecting those different opinions together and going in a direction is really important. But it does take a lot of time to learn that, I think, because people are so used to being in a totally hierarchical environment. So we're learning new skill sets here, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Justin. I think that at the start, it was the frustration was the most difficult thing. Working in different time zones is very difficult. I mean, it's late, it's 7 o'clock here for me. It's, and you have to be flexible on your being able to work some twilight shifts is a big must, because it's not fair that everyone's always, that the guy in Australia's got to wake up in the middle of the night all the time. So you've got the actual time is a difficulty, and I just think this idea of it is frustrating, and everybody else is wrong apart from you, but you've got to suck it up and think that they're right in the end. And working part of the team and getting that trust with people is really important. But it's exciting, it's interesting and exciting at the same time. But I think there's a bit of frustration as part built as part of that.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I mean, that's like looking backwards. I mean, at this point in time, we've sort of found that happy middle ground. That's always, it's evolving a little bit of kind of giving people the authority to represent certain areas, you know, like partnerships, and trusting their abilities, whilst having some decentralized accountability to the board at the same time. So yeah, things have really evolved, and that aspect is a lot easier now than it has ever been. So I don't want people to worry that they're going to come into something that is, you know, just no leadership, no nothing. It's just like a free for all in voting, because that we found to date with the current tool set, it doesn't work. But there's a middle ground of accountability that's decentralized, and also providing authority and leadership within the group.
Awesome, thanks. I just realized I answered Betty's question in the chat, but I was direct messaging it to Jim, not to the chat. So I'm just going to drop these links here. Betty, you asked about where you can find more resources and such. So I'm going to quickly drop 3 links in the chat here. And I would encourage you to check out the very last one. That has the most information there, where we go over just what we've been talking about in terms of expected guidelines for workload, expectations, that sort of things. But the first 2 pieces, that's kind of our 3-part series so far. Tons of information there. Third link in particular. Great. So, you know, we talked about the most challenging, and there's good questions here. Let's just quickly give the other side of it, because there's somebody asked what's the most rewarding aspect of serving on the board. You know, you guys have been through it, been at it for a while. So, and a lot of you guys have been here, you know, when there was no resources, funds, or anything, right? So there's got to be something more there. For some reason, you guys stuck through it all. How come?
I'll go first and quickly. I think the biggest reward is the fact that we're still here and it's still there. You know, when you look back, it's amazing that this thing kept going when it was at less than a cent. You know, and it was, you know, and people just kept going and kept going and kept going, and that's testament to everybody on the chain. You know, we haven't mentioned Douglas today, and you know, his tenacity and everyone's tenacity all the way through, just to almost ignore price, and we believe in the tech, and we believe in the chain, and we believe it's going to work. And I think that's really important, and it's rewarding. You know, I've done a few of the events where we've actually been speaking to people, and that was rewarding. So I'll admit that. But you know, the fact that we're still here, I think that's the reward.
Yeah, I mean, I can second that. I think watching Telos go from like basically a seedling or an acorn, basically an idea, you know, a white paper, you know, to what it is now, and just seeing how resilient the network is as a whole. You know, obviously the foundation being a small part of that. It's just amazing to watch how we could survive through such tough times, and then also kind of start to thrive as we are doing now. It's quite an evolution, and it really has renewed my belief in, you know, decentralized networks. I don't think like a startup could have survived through the downturn like Telos has. It's because of our decentralization and the way that we work that we could, you know, get by and even grow quite significantly to like hundreds of apps now, or implementations of various types. Yeah, that's just not possible with these older structures. And we started this with no funds raised, and you know, now we, you know, over 2 years later, we did do a fundraising, but you know, largely this thing has grown like an organism on its own. And yeah, that's just increasing over time.
That's great. And Betty had a great comment here. Just wanted to say that she enjoys the work put in and have put our faith in this network. I think it's just a matter of time for Africa to get on board with this. I agree. Betty, I hope we see you putting your hat in the race. If it's not there already, I'll be watching for your application. I think we're good to wrap up now. You know, we've been going at it about an hour and 10 minutes, along with the technical difficulties at the beginning. I apologize. You know, we are working out these kinks, but this has been a great event. Justin, I believe it's recording on your end, so I'm going to get you to sort of pass that along to me afterwards, and we'll see if we can get it posted somewhere for people who are interested who couldn't attend, or for people who are here and think of a good board candidate potential that they want to pass this on to. Right before we close, if we do have, if any, because I didn't really say this at the beginning, if anyone feels the need to sort of unmute their mic or chat concerns, questions, comments, feel free. Ideally, just let us know in the chat and we can sort of make sure that happens. But in the meantime, Jim, Justin, do you have any other, Kylan asked, not going over the roles real quick. Kylan, could you clarify that question, please?
Yeah, so just to clarify, as we were talking about earlier, the role is purely as a board member. So, they're all the same. Obviously, as a community, we do want the voting public to go, hey, it'd be nice to have someone who, has an interest or experience in, say, marketing, various parts of the technology stack, back end, front end, business development, but purely just to bring that experience to the decision making of the board. But the board seats themselves are all individually the same. You can obviously apply for a staff position at the foundation, and we're taking staff from all aspects of what we do, so definitely apply there, and we'll put more roles on the website as the foundation grows.
I think
so. Yeah.
Sorry, Justin, just to jump in. Just for clarification, I think you need to see this in Britain. We have say things like a school or they're a board of governors, and it's you're on the board of governors. You're not expected to do the work. You're expected to be part of the process of the transparency and guiding the work forward, and it's to be the voice of the community. We're not having a role of a treasurer. There's not a role of this, that, or the other. You bring your skills and you'll put forward what your skills are, and the community will decide whether they want you to represent them.
Yeah.
It's a representation role rather than a work role. The role is to be a representative of the community on the chain and to put your view to the core team and steer their work and sign off on their checks.
Yeah, I laugh a little because that's a sticking point with confusion around the elections that I've tried to clarify, but it is just confusing. And I think it's because people think corporate board where you have CEO, CMO, CPO, all that kind of stuff. It's not that kind of board. And that's why we've developed this core team, right? To encourage community members who don't feel necessarily like, oh, I don't have the skills to know about that. I barely understand exchanges. Just have a passion about Telos and the community and want to do what's best for the direction of Telos. That's really the main, those qualities and characteristics in that document that Jim's laid out, so that they can oversee the working professionals and make sure that the work is done in the best interests of the community, and change that structure if they feel like it needs to. If they feel like they want to step in as a CEO, CMO, whatever, elect a CEO, that can happen gradually over time. But the most important thing is that we make sure it's as low barrier as entry for people of all skill sets, I think, to be on the board and there to represent the community. So don't think of it as a typical corporate board. Jim, that's a great way of sort of laying it out. That's a good example there. A level, like I say, more of a level of diplomacy there. Is there any last things you guys want to say before we end? Jim, Justin, thanks for taking the time to be here and help with this event.
No, definitely. If you're interested, definitely put your name up and, start interacting with the community, start doing work via the worker proposal system. I think an important part of, getting voted in is you need to sort of gain the trust of the community. And the best way to do that is to be part of a project or some sort of social thing. Because, the community needs something to, I guess, judge your commitment to the network on. So just get involved. That's my biggest suggestion.
All right. Should we wrap up? I think we're good. Thanks everyone for coming out, sticking with us through the technical difficulties at the beginning, and being here for these events. You know, they're not as exciting as a partnership AMA or whatever, but they are very important. Some would argue, myself included, more important than those things, because they are really the community aspect, and the community is Telos. So being here for these discussions is super important. Encourage people to come out to them. We'll get a better platform for having them, I promise. And sort of figure out these kinks as we go. But thanks so much, everyone, for coming out. We'll see you next Telos Tuesday. Next Telos Tuesday is going to be an AMA that'll be on the YouTube channel, and we'll likely have more details on who that is and what the event's going to be soon. So stay tuned. All right, take care. Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.